you come in tonight, which would be to my right, to everybody else's left, there's a set of double doors there. You walk through those doors, there's a sign-in sheet on the desk. If you're a guest with us tonight, please sign in. City Clerk, can I have a roll call?
Councilperson Morrissey.
Here.
Palladino.
Here.
Pratt.
Here.
Sharp.
Here.
Soha.
Here.
Stuchel.
Here.
Veer. Wolfram.
Here.
Mayor Stocker.
Here.
State President.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move into approval of agenda. Any members of council or the city manager have any changes to make to the agenda tonight? Seeing no changes, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mayor, I do have a letter that I would like to enter into the record.
Okay.
Communication.
Okay.
It's from Phil McDonald from Cobra Moto, who's on the board. So we have that communications.
Okay. Do I have a motion to add Cobra Moto Manufacturing letter under communications? It would be item letter D. Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda? Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We've got an agenda. We'll move into public comment on agenda items only. During this time, the podium will be open. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. And please, if you're going to comment during this public comment period, make sure it has a direct tie to something that's present on the agenda tonight. Also take note, there's 2 public hearings, one for rezoning of 440 and 450 Hidden Meadows Drive, and one for the workforce housing pilot ordinance. If you want to speak on either of these, there will be a public comment section during the public hearings. The podium is now open.
Good evening, Council. My name is Bob Batt. I'm the current president of the Hillsdale Board of Public Utilities, and I'd like to share the Board of Public Utilities perspective on item 8A on the agenda tonight, consideration of the board appointments. We want the board, the council, to know that we are neither disinterested nor uninterested in this topic, and that it was discussed at our last board meeting, and we'd like to share some thoughts that we had about our board and the appointment process and makeup of the board. Like many city boards and commissions, the BPU makes recommendations when there are vacancies. Our recommendations are not political, they're not ideological. We have no agenda other than to provide the mayor and council with candidates to appoint who we feel have the best ability to lead the utility and fulfill its mission to meet or exceed customers' needs and expectations for reliable, economic, and environmentally sound utility services. The BPU is a complex and valuable part of Hillsdale City government. The budget is 3 to 4 times that of the city proper. It contributes upwards of $1 million per year to the city in the form of the pilot. It is a highly technical organization which is subject to numerous regulations such as capacity requirements, green energy, and the lead copper rule. As such, the board recommends candidates who we feel have the skills and experience to best serve the utility. We first consider a candidate's management and business experience, financial background, technical expertise, governance experience, and demonstrated interest in community service. While we generally know whether or not a candidate is a city resident, that is not our primary consideration for nomination. We do think a candidate should either be a customer of the BPU or involved with a company who is a customer of the BPU, so that they have a vested interest in the utility success. In the past, it has been difficult to find individuals who have these attributes who reside in the city and who are interested in serving, although I'm sure there are city residents who meet that standard. We would like to recommend more city residents, but often the people who are suggested do not live in the city. It is true that for the past 15 years or so, many of the board members have not been city residents. This is not a deliberate strategy. It is rather a result of the large pool of candidates for board membership under the current practice. Continuing the current practice of classifying board members as employees does not preclude the appointment of city residents to the board. It does, however, provide a larger pool for consideration. Our board members regardless of where they live, do not make decisions based on our residency. We make decisions based for the benefit of the ratepayers and the community and the health and success of the utility. We understand that how board appointments are made is a policy decision that is entirely the purview of City Council and the mayor. Mayor of City Council. Our interest is in sharing the board's perspective on appointments to encourage council to consider as broad a palette of eligible and qualified candidates as possible, and that appointments are based on skills and qualifications. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Bob. Any more public comment on agenda items?
Thank you. My name is Troy Ricardo. I'm a member of the Hillsdale Airport Advisory Committee, and this is in reference to Agenda 9B. So I came to this meeting to confirm that the Advisory Committee has voted to recommend the airport terminal contract will be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more public comment on agenda items?
Penny Swan, Ward 4. This compromise with the BPU board isn't addressing what was brought up initially. You are limiting the qualified candidates that you have available to that board. The BPU is a business and a multi-million-dollar business, and it is a very technical business at that. I would think you would want the very best qualified candidates on this board. And as I've stated in the past, you have other boards that have non-city residents on them. I would think if you're going to address non-city residents on boards, you would deal with the entirety of the boards and the non-residents on those boards at one time. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Any more public comment?
Jack McLean. I have actually it's a question. The airport is in the zone township. I asked the advisory committee and they didn't have the answer to this question. With that being said, do they have to get a zoning permit to build that meets the specification of the township, or is the city exempt from that for any reason?
Thank you, Jack. Any more public comment on agenda items?
Good evening. My name is Kent Heisey. Not quite a 2-year resident of this community, but we were very happy to be here. 30 some odd years ago, I don't remember the exact date, a friend of mine and I had the opportunity to land at Hillsdale's airport. And I thought, oh, it's a nice little airport. And it was. But today it's a much better airport and very, very well deserving of a terminal that will meet the community's needs, business needs for this area, and wholeheartedly support the fact that the Federal Aviation Authority has agreed to provide us with $2.5 million of funding for that. And I've been pleased also to notice that over the years, through the sale of fuel and hangar rents, Hillsdale Airport has set aside money for the completion of this project also. So I wholeheartedly encourage you, as our community leaders, to approve that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Any more public comment on agenda items? Seeing none, we will close the podium. And we will move into the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we've got approval of bills, city and BPU claims of June 15th and June 29th, payroll of June 22nd and July 6th, city council minutes of June 19th, finance minutes of June 19th and July 5th, airport advisory minutes of April 8th and July 8th, community development minutes of May 2nd, operation and governance committee minutes of June 22nd. There's a noise variance request for Hillsdale College for their freshman festivities. There's a park use agreement, which is a ratification of the domestic harmony agreement. And then there's a backhoe purchase for a John Deere backhoe for Board of Public Utilities. Any questions or comments on any of the items in the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha to approve the consent agenda. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Councilperson Palladino,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Soha,
Yes.
Stuchel,
Yes.
Wolfram,
Yes.
Mayor Stocker,
Yes.
and Councilperson Morrissey.
Yes.
That's 8-0 approved.
Thank you, Katie. All right, we'll move into communications petitions. Item letter A is share the warmth update from Penny Myers, and I see Penny back there. Penny, you want to come forward and give us an update?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for having me in City Council. It's not a real big update. I just wanted to let you guys know that Share the Warmth of Hillsdale County, we are exploring the idea of becoming a full-time shelter. There's a lot of work ahead of us. Hopefully within 6 months or so, I'll be able to come back with more details of how we're moving along and what that may look like. So I just wanted to let you guys know, with all of the attention that we've had on the homeless situation, we just felt like this is something that we wanted to do. So again, I just wanted to thank you for letting me come and give you this update. And if any of you would like to be involved, we'd welcome you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Penny. Can you wait 1 second in case anybody has any questions?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions for Penny as long as she's at the podium? All right, thank you, Penny.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move into communications petitions. Item letter B, which is Kiefer House Hotel construction update. Is there a Kiefer representative here? There is not. Otherwise, there's a letter in the packet. I'm not going to read it. It's from Brant Cohen regarding the construction status of the Kiefer House Hotel. So if you're interested in that, it's available in the packet. We will move to item letter C in communications petitions, which is an airport email. This is to Ginger. It says, thank you very much for setting aside your courtesy car for my daughter and me during our quick visit to Hillsdale last Wednesday. We greatly enjoyed your town and our walk around Hillsdale College. We had a great chat with Mr. Steven, and we sure enjoyed meeting Lucy prior to our departure. Looking forward to coming back to Hillsdale again soon. And this is from Mel Chapman. Anything to add to this, Ginger? It's nice to get encouraging emails.
It is, I didn't know that guy had a blog when he came or anything, but he and his daughter they went all over Hillsdale. They got all the history of the town and the college, and in his blog, he tells all about Hillsdale, not just the airport. But love the airport, but it's great to get those.
That's awesome. Any questions for Ginger? Councilman Soha?
The blog, the airport's Facebook page has a link to the
Correct.
blog, because the link here doesn't work.
And the Facebook page for the airport, because there seems to be many of them, the official one is called the Hillsdale Municipal Airport, so you put the in front of it.
Thank you, Ginger. Great job. Okay, and then item letter B in communications and petitions is the Cobra Moto manufacturing letter from Mr. Phil McDowell. And Dave, do you want to read that?
Yes, Mayor, I will do that.
Thank you.
Mr. McDowell had sent this over today to the Hillsdale City Council. And Mr. McDowell is a member on the board. I think he was appointed 22, so last year, last spring. When I decided to be considered as a potential member of the Hillsdale BPU, I threw my hat in the ring because my annual electric bill with the BPU was over $51,000. Water and sewer, almost $5,000. My business has an important machine critical to our customers that fails miserably and costly when electrical power is interrupted. Power interruptions occurred too frequently for my liking. I have associations with associations, to other large utility companies, thus giving me some access to their insight. I am motivated enough for the benefits of green power that I have my own personal 9 kW array at home. I am a business owner with a graduate degree in engineering. These 7 points hold true whether I live in the city limits or not.
being a BPU customer with motivation, knowledge, and interest, and making the commitment should be the most important criteria for the board selection and should not be sacrificed for location of residence. Said otherwise, my motivation to make the power more reliable and at an affordable cost certainly applies for those living inside or outside the city limits. Respectfully, Phil McDonald.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding any of the items on communications petitions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to introduction and adoption of ordinances, but I have one request from council. We're just realizing that if item B, the workhouse housing pilot ordinance, doesn't pass, it makes item A obsolete. So I would recommend a motion right now to amend the introduction and adoption of ordinances, public hearing, and swap item B for item A. Yes, A for B. Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilwoman Pratt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So let me get caught up in my packet because now that we've swapped the two of them, we will move into introduction and adoption of ordinances. Public hearing, item A, public hearing, workforce housing pilot ordinance. And the City of Hillsdale's Economic Development Corporation signed a purchase agreement with Green Development Ventures LLC on March 21st, 2023, with the objective of calling the EDC's remaining land, which is approximately 25 3/4 of an acre, located in the Three Meadows subdivision. The developer, Allen Edwin Homes, has proposed constructing workforce housing targeted at middle-income families. To keep the rents in these new single-family homes affordable for middle-income families, they are seeking to utilize legislation which enables developers of workforce housing projects to enter into pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, agreements with local governing units. This proposed ordinance would establish the framework for the developer to apply to the city for this tax exemption. So the public hearing is now open. Sam, do you want to start it off, or do we have any representatives from Green Development Ventures here?
We do have both, Mayor. But
All right.
we'll have Sam started off, if you may.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As we discussed at our last meeting, this agenda item here is in relation to what the EDC is trying to do with developing the Three Meadows subdivision. Many of you know that the EDC has owned property out there, and a lot of it has been vacant for almost 20 years. Earlier this year, the EDC signed a purchase agreement with Green Development Ventures to sell the remaining land that exists out there. So the goal has always been to complete that subdivision, to see that filled with single-family homes, to achieve the original vision set out there. And this agenda item here, as described, would essentially create a framework for this developer or a developer of a similar project to be able to apply to the city for a pilot exemption for this specific workforce housing type project. So currently the city doesn't have anything in place to allow that. So this ordinance, again, would just establish the process for them to come to city council and apply for that pilot agreement. So I just want to emphasize this is not a vote on the project necessarily, but just on the ordinance that is necessary for us to present this to the city and for us to take up projects like these. We do have representatives from Allen Edwin Homes here, Brian and Mike West, who are able to answer questions. If you have any questions specifically related to this ordinance, we can have them come up now, or if you guys decide to adopt this and then you have questions related to the rezoning component, we can do that as well.
Thank you, Sam. I don't see real reason to have the developers come up yet. But does anybody have any questions for Sam while he's at the podium regarding the ordinance, not the project? Thank you, Sam. Oh, Councilman Soha has a question. Councilman Soha.
I was reading through this, I just didn't see how the pilot is determined, or what the
if you look at the pilot ordinance, which is in the council packet, it does set out the terms for these type of agreements. What it says in there is 10% of sheltered rents. That would be the actual pilot payment amount. So, and again, an actual pilot agreement would have to come before city council for approval. So you would have to vote on any of that separately. So this is just establishing the framework, and then at an upcoming meeting, if they submit a pilot application, that would come before council as well.
Thank you, Sam. Did you have something to add, Dave?
Yes, just a couple things I wanted to mention. The copy that I provided all of you is actually kind of lays out the income and rent limits for this type of pilot. So it is limited to 120% of the area median income in Hillsdale County. So as you can see, if at 120%, if it's one person, they can make up to 60,000, and if you go up to 5 or 4, let's say 4, it's 85,800. That is the upper limit on the rental side for the restricted units. That being said, as Sam had mentioned, this was legislation that was approved by the state late last year, which was providing an extra tool for economic developers and to develop housing for what they call basically the missing middle. Typically, you'll find incentivized housing at the lower end for 40% or 60, less than 60% of the area median income, but nothing for that group that's kind of right in the middle. That's not full-blown market rate, but wouldn't qualify at the lower level. But so that being said, these are the income limits, which I feel, based on my experience in the housing industry for, I venture to say, probably close to 30 years, these are pretty good amounts for folks to move into the community or move around in the community to rent one of these particular units. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave or Sam? Councilman Palladino.
Do you know how these rates compare to market rates? Did you do a study on that?
So the developer, in that handout that Dave has, there's a range of rates, and I believe that depends on the actual unit itself. Some of these maybe 3 or 4 bedroom varieties, so there's a few things that go into that. I would say the goal with this project, and specifically utilizing this type of legislation, is to be able to offer housing of a higher quality than would otherwise be possible at rates that are targeted towards those middle income families here locally. And we just received a housing report today, actually, that the EDP had sent over. And so, these homes that we're talking about specifically are probably, if you had to build them new, starting around 250,000, maybe going up, which is actually substantially higher than the actual median value of homes in our community. So what they're proposing is building brand new, very nice, high quality housing, and being able to offer that at a rate that is competitive to what the area offers and is affordable for working families here in Hillsdale.
Thank you. Councilman Stuchel.
Project, but is it possible for a renter to become home in this process?
So this specific legislation requires that they be rental units for a term of at least 15 years. So the properties would be kept as rentals during that initial time frame, and then afterwards the owner could choose to sell them off or continue them potentially as rentals, looking at the market rate once this exemption has expired.
Councilman Palladino.
So you said single-family homes in the introduction, but it looks like the legislation and the zoning ordinance change allow for multifamily homes.
So I think we might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves with this specific rezoning request, but what they're looking to do, there are two separate parcels that are part of the purchase agreement that the EDC has signed. There's an initial parcel that's about 5 acres. It's immediately adjacent to the Three Meadows Medical Facility building. What they're looking at doing there, because of the limitations, if you look at that lot, about 2 or 3 acres on the front of that is a retention pond. So because of the limits of that site, they're looking at doing semi-detached duplexes. So they are essentially separate family homes that share a common wall in the garage area. And we can discuss that more with the developer when we get into the rezoning aspect, but that would strictly be for that front initial parcel. The intention with the rest of the property, should they choose to purchase that option land, would be to do single family homes, fairly consistent with what's already out there.
But unrelated to the project itself, this can be used for multifamily, any sort of zoning.
Yeah, so this project specifically, we're looking at single family, but yes, potentially developers could present other projects with different visions, and seek a pilot agreement like that. Those would have to go through planning and then through council, so you guys would have control over, what housing you wanted to see consistent with the neighborhoods and the areas.
If we're looking at higher quality housing than the average, below market rates, what's the plan for distributing these? How are we predicting wait lists? Because it seems like everyone is going to want to live in lower than market rate housing. That's a brand new build when most people live in a 100-year-old home.
So I guess I'll let the developers kind of address some of the specifics of the project. I think they'd be happy to discuss this and kind of talk about their vision if we want to do that now, or if we want to specifically wait until that rezoning request.
Did you have a question, Councilman Wolford?
I do. I was just looking at under the income and rent limits, where it says 4 person. Is that just adults?
That would be family size, so if it's 2 adults and 2 children, so it's household.
Okay, so that would be $2,145 per month.
That is the max limit. The hopes are that would be a fair amount less than that, yes.
Any more questions, comments? Councilman Soha?
Just for my complete understanding, the pilot, what we're voting on right now, would provide an opportunity for the developer to submit an application to say, instead of paying taxes on this property we want to develop, we're going to pay, when the amount is up to 10% of the value. That's where I'm still.
Yeah, that's correct. So what's being voted on tonight is specifically the ordinance that allows them to formally present this project to council, asking for a pilot exemption. They would do that at a later meeting. This tonight is just to establish the framework to be able to entertain these. Obviously, we've been discussing the project already to keep you guys informed with how this came about. But this would be just to put this ordinance in place. And then 10% of sheltered rents is a provision in this in the pilot ordinance that we have here. So, yeah.
So, am I understanding correctly, if we were just to multiply the 4-person rent by 12, it's like 24,000, 10% would be a 2,400. Is that how that's calculated? Could you explain it in real terms? Sorry.
So whatever the rent amount that they collect, it's 10% of that for whatever rates they charge.
Okay, so a $250,000 home, do we know the difference between, just not even relating it to the project, just speaking broadly, what the difference would be under a standard millage rate versus this 10% shelter rate?
Not off the top of my head, but we could certainly look at that information and try to figure out a comparison. Unless Dave has.
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we do have, I believe, 4 housing projects that do a pilot of 10% of their shelter rents. The high rise,
Hilltop, Center City,
Center City,
Beacon Hill.
So this is something that we're already doing. The legislation allowed it to be applied towards single family or different type of configurations.
Councilman Stuchel.
So if rent does go up, so does the pilot.
Yes.
Just to address what I think the question is from Councilman Palladino. The difference is going to be that it would be hard necessarily to correlate them because the property tax that would be paid is generally going to be based on the value of the property itself. It wouldn't have anything to do with how much you're renting it out for. So that's where you might have perhaps even a fairly large difference depending on what the rent is, which may be significantly over time at 10% higher than what the millage rate would be just based on that.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get at. It seems like a $250,000 home might be 8 to 10,000, just ballpark thinking about that, based on my own home's value. But so it seems like it could be 20% or less of the standard millage rate.
That sounds pretty accurate from what we're discussing. It's about 80% of what you've been paying taxes. Did you have something to add, Mr. Sherk?
Yeah.
Councilman?
We've got a housing shortage, not only in Hillsdale, but you go to the other counties, they're all hurting. And we got this big thing going up in Marshall, 2,500 jobs, so there's gonna be people that will be willing to live down here to drive that distance. We need to offer something because right now, if you've noticed, drive around Hillsdale, see how many houses for sale and how long they're on the market. There's a demand, and we need to meet that demand or we're gonna be left behind again. And I don't wanna always be the one left behind. And the pilot program does work, but this still has to go through the plan commission and council. And you do ask a lot of good questions, and I do appreciate it too, because you're enlightening us on some stuff. But we desperately need this for Hillsdale. Thank you.
And we can put together, when the application would come forward, we can put together those numbers, and we will, for the council to make their decision on, to show them what that difference is, most definitely.
Any more questions for Sam or Dave? Thank you, Sam. Stay close.
Thank you.
We'll now open up the podium for public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. And remember, this is only about the workforce housing pilot ordinance. That's what we're discussing currently. The podium is now open. Seeing no public comment, we'll close the podium. Council, any more discussion on the ordinance, just the ordinance?
I'm skeptical about giving reduced rates to such a high level of income. $85,000, I mean, that's a serious income in Hillsdale. I'm just not sure that that is deserving of a subsidized rate, especially when people are going to want the new homes that don't have the constant repairs like the old homes in Hillsdale that we're all used to. So it seems like there might be a significant difference between supply and demand here. I'm wondering how that's going to be adjudicated. I'm also concerned that we're increasing the number of large corporations in the city that are going to get a tax abatement. As you all know, we already have a serious problem with our largest institutions being tax exempt. I'll leave it.
Sure. No, I mean, I share a lot of your concerns, Councilman Palladino. There's a part of me that's saying, we offer these deals to huge corporations that make a ton of money, and we offer these deals to people that don't work or can't work or don't have any money, and there's nothing for the people in the middle, which I think pretty much everybody up here fits that category as kind of lower to middle class people. So I share your concerns, but I'm not sure that the system is set up fair for people in the middle income range. As you said, $80,000 is a lot of money in Hillsdale. It is, but it's still middle class, you know, in the grand scheme of things. And the, you know, the nonprofits that we have in town are, of course, a major contributing factor to not having much tax income that comes into the city. But the main issue that we have with them is that they're all, not only are they tax exempt, but they don't pay a pilot payment either. So, you know, I feel like this is kind of meeting in the middle on that. Any more? Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'll also add that I'm concerned about the rental for 15 years. Right, we're trying to create new properties, but what happens over 15 years of rental versus single-family home ownership in terms of the quality of that housing? I would also like to know, you know, why are the corporations agreeing to subsidized rates? I'm sure they're not doing this out of the kindness of their heart.
I'm sure they're not either.
But the rental for 15 years, I have a problem with. Also, the ability to zone this in any way. You know, if these were being sold as single-family homes immediately when they were new builds, and they were zoned single-family residential, I could see the workforce housing thing, but I mean, I think our primary commitment needs to be getting people in homes that they own, that they're building up equity. That's one of the primary things you do to build a strong city and a strong community, is get people who are putting money in their own bank.
Absolutely. Dave?
I would like to address that from an economic development standpoint. That would all be well and good, but we do not have the housing in the community on which for people to purchase and/or even the rental side of things. I think anyone who's tried to move here has found out that the rental market is so slim, and if you do find something nice, it's either very expensive or needs a lot of work and probably isn't the quality that you would like. What this will do is fill that gap in the middle. And what it does in providing an incentive, the incentive's never been there. You either had an incentive from the lower end, which was multifamily housing, or you had market rate, which is taken care of in the community. If you can afford the higher end market rate, you typically can find something, even though that's pretty slim in the Hillsdale County and Hillsdale area. What this will do, and the subdivision's been there for 20 years. If it was going to be driven by market rate, it would have been driven by now. This incentive that was created by the state legislature was because they've heard this issue all over the state and created this workforce housing pilot to try to address that. And as the summary mentions, the city of Jackson, just north of us, has passed a pilot ordinance. White Cloud has, and others are in the works for this. And we, because the developers' knowledge of Hillsdale, are kind of at the front end of this as opposed to being at the back end of it, where the developers already have their plates full. So what, again, this inevitably comes down to the question is the chicken or the egg, right? Do you need jobs before you need housing, or you need housing before you need jobs? And the answer is both. You need them both. And this will provide, in the front end, I believe it's 14 units on the front lot because it's one large lot. But in the back, we're talking about 50 single-family units or 50 single-family lots thereabouts. So this really would help make a dent in our housing issue, which is Sam will tell you that we are, every week or two, he's getting a call, someone desperate to find housing. And, I've actually had Sam go out and look at the housing they're building in other places that they're proposing to build here. And, he could speak to that. But the quality is there, the functionality is there. These are actually nice homes that many folks would probably like to live in, particularly in the area. One of the things, or a couple of things this will do, is there might be some current homeowners within the community that would choose to rent in a newer home than, and what that will also do is create pressure on some of our current property owners, which might not be keeping their property up to a level that they should be because the market's so tight, and so that they'll have to invest in their properties, thus helping to lift the whole community. As far as housing quality, which I think many would recognize that we're lacking in a fair portion of good quality housing.
I mean, we're just passing the ordinance right now, and I would add that the ordinance was in place for the multifamily use, and we had the Center City project brought in front of council, and we said yes on it. And then it was maybe 2 years later, we had another project brought in front of us for this same pilot ordinance on multi-housing, and we rejected it. We said, no, we don't think that's a good location, we don't like. So ultimately, at the end of it, city council's still gonna be another added layer of arbitration before any project can go forward. So, did you have something to add?
It's 20 years. We were supposed to be in phase 3 or 4 maybe by then. We're still sitting in phase 1. That land just sits there. Plenty of wildlife out there right now, but there's nothing else. We need to develop that. If people sell their house and move in there, so be it. Their house will be on the market and it'll be sold. Why not allow people to take advantage? Because some people have big houses, they get older, they don't want to live in it anymore. They want to have an opportunity though to stay in this community. How are they going to do it if they don't have housing? And that's why I'm in favor of doing this.
Did you have something else, Councilman Palladino?
Yes, thank you. I hope this would lead to more investment, but my concern is that you can get a subsidized rental home that is of the highest quality, newly built, when we have a housing stock that to a large degree is falling apart. And we experience the same thing, right? My 4-person family does not meet even the 60% threshold. So we buy a dump and we put money into it and we keep the housing stock up. But if a lot of people have the option to get something really nice that they don't have a lot of work in, and it's comparable to what they could get of a really old home in the city, I'm worried that's going to drive them out. And maybe the housing market will remain tight for our current landlords, but our current landlords are going to have to make those investments and those improvements on houses that are further deteriorated, so they're at a disadvantage based on the housing, and they won't have the subsidy with which to make those improvements. So I'm worried that our current landlords are going to be put at a significant disadvantage, and you're going to sort of draw people away from the older homes that need a lot of love and care, because there will be a more economically and aesthetically pleasing option.
Aesthetically pleasing option to rent, not to own, though. So, we'll meet it there.
We talk about current landlords. I had one that lives down the street from me, 65 and 69. We all remember that. We try to hold the current landlords to being responsible towards their properties. And some of them refuse to do that. They just want the rent and they don't care about anything else. And that was before you were on this council. And they're now a nice sitting vacant lot sitting there. And it had to be done. Do we hold landlords being responsible to the tenants? Honestly, no.
Councilman Palladino.
of course, I'd be happy to hold the current landlords responsible, but the question still is going to be, they are going to now have to compete against a subsidized rate with homes that are still falling apart. And so if we're talking about encouraging, we have to think about the incentives here, right? They can go across the street to a new build for $2,000. All of a sudden, they're going to have to cut their rates. What does that do for their investment in their properties? They're going to have to say, okay, I'm going to have to pull back from investments even more because now I have to cut rates in order to compete with, 30, 50 new homes, whatever it is.
Or maybe fix their property.
But once again, at an unfair market advantage with homes that are in a worse state.
Okay, I mean, I see everybody's point of view, you know. I mean, I'm gonna wanna a home before I rent always. I'd rather own a dump than rent a mansion,
Yeah,
so.
me too. But that's not,
I know that's not everybody.
that's not everybody.
Councilman Salah.
I'm inclined to agree with Bruce on this. That when I first moved here and did the restaurant, I was offered a piece of property out there for $1 if I would build on it. But I didn't take it up on that because I didn't have the ability to build a house at the time. And like it's been mentioned multiple times, that property sat vacant, for 20 years, and now we have an opportunity to, let's just make it the math easy, $2,500 a year for 15 years for 42 properties. That's a nice chunk of change. And then I'm certain whether the developers keep it or sell it, it's in their best interest to maintain the properties. And is it a disadvantage to current homeowners or people, maybe, but men haven't been investing in their properties in our city for a long time. I walked into many dilapidated homes in 2020, and it was horrific, and the city really doesn't have any grounds to go in there unless there's certain provisions for the city to be able to hold homeowners accountable for the condition of their property. And this would maybe incentivize, and yeah, they're gonna have to invest in their own property, and hopefully they can make a profit at market rates, and if not, then they can sell the house and the market will correct itself. But to have this land sit undeveloped for 20 more years, or to have it developed and in 15 years, maybe they would be inclined to sell. I don't know, we'll find out at the next public hearing. But this is just the opportunity for them to submit a pilot, and if they don't have the opportunity, then the probability of them even considering the investment probably goes away. So I'm in favor.
Any more questions, comments?
I agree, we would get more money. One other point that comes up now is, do we know what the cost of providing these additional services will be in relation to that 10% of shared rents? Okay, sure, we'll get 50 times $2,500 a year. Great, but what's the actual cost to the city during those 15 years? It's not free, right? We have to provide services.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we got sewer out there already because of the Three Meadows subdivision, right?
The infrastructure that's not out there or not expanded into those areas would be the developer's cost in building the development. One of the reasons why they're building in the front is because all the infrastructure is there, so that gives them a lower cost of entry into those first 14 units. But in the back section, the 50 some, and that's all, in the planning stage. They would have to put the roads and water and the sewer and whatnot in, so that cost would be theirs as part of their development.
Councilman Sharp.
Also, we'd have more BPU customers, so more money coming into the city that way too, with electric, water, and sewer usage. So it's a win-win for everybody, as far as I'm concerned. But this is just the initial stages, is what we're voting on.
Any more discussion? Guys, I'm gonna call this pretty soon. We're just voting on the ordinance, that's it. One more comment.
I mean, it's a big deal. We don't have control over what rates. The ordinance sets the rates. It's not like the project is flexible after that. It's 10%. The ordinance is part of the project, there's no escaping that.
Everybody know how they're gonna vote on this? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Soha to pass the ordinance. Adopt the following workforce housing pilot ordinance, which will allow the developer to apply for a workforce housing pilot tax exemption. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Councilperson Pratt,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Soha,
Yes.
Stuchel,
Yes.
Wolfram,
Yes.
Mayor Stockford,
Yes.
Councilperson Morrissey,
Yes.
and Palladino.
No.
That's 7-1, that's approved, that's ordinance 2023-04.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, we will move into introduction and adoption of ordinances, public hearing, item letter B, which is the rezoning of 440 and 450 Hidden Meadows Drive. The property located at 440, 450 Hidden Meadows Drive is a vacant property currently owned by the City of Hillsdale Economic Development Corporation. It is bordered on two sides by public streets to the south and the east. The west side of the parcel is the city limit, is bordered by agricultural property. The north side is adjacent to the 3 Meadow subdivision, which is zoned R1 single family. The EDC currently has a purchase agreement with Green Ventures LLC. As a requirement of the agreement, Green Ventures LLC applied for the rezoning of the property from R1 single family residential district to RM1, which is multi-family residential district. The Planning Commission held a public hearing at the June 21st, 2023 meeting. The Commission moved to recommend the rezoning of the property as requested by Green Ventures LLC. Recommendation from the City Planning Commission is that City Council adopt the resolution to amend the zoning ordinance, section 36-143. All right, let's bring the gentleman from Green Ventures LLC up here so we can ask some questions about the project. Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Mike West with Green Development Ventures, 2186 East Center Avenue in Portage, Michigan. Thank you very much for this consideration. Just want to talk specifically about the rezoning. It is just on that southern piece. It's 2 parcels, approximately 6 acres. The southern, approximately 2 acres, is stormwater pond that would be retained by the EDC. We'd be purchasing the northern approximate 4 acres of that property. When we packaged this, we wanted to give the city and the adjacent property owners just assurances of what we were going to do, so we did it as a conditional rezoning application. There were 5 specific conditions that we voluntarily offered with the application. I'll read those into the record if you don't mind, they're short. So the request is from R1 to RM1. It would be subject to a total of 6 duplex dwellings or 2 family attached units, so a total of 12 across that property. All dwellings will meet the minimum setback and separation requirements for the RM1 district. All dwellings will be connected to public sanitary sewer and public water supply system. Sidewalks will be installed along the west side of Hidden Meadows Drive, along the frontage. And then that open space areas and landscaping and screening will be provided as generally depicted on the preliminary site plan map that we provided with the rezoning application. So again, we're asking for RM1, but we have no intention, and we couldn't under this proposal do anything other than what we're proposing here. We're not going to do apartments or 4-unit townhomes. It's going to be these 2-unit, 2-family attached units, 6 of them. Our understanding is the property used to be an office, I think up until a few years ago when it was rezoned to R1. Still, I think in your plan, master plan, it's called for offices. I know offices haven't moved to that area for 20 years or so. From a single-family detached standpoint, it really doesn't make sense from the plat on this property. When you look at the stormwater pond, you look at the wetlands, you look at the configuration of that parcel, it just doesn't, it's not conducive to single-family subdivision development. So those 2-family homes, just so you know, they're going to be 1,640 square feet. So each one of those units is going to have be 2 stories, 1,640 on the square footage, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car attached garage. The units will be attached at the garage, so you'll be sharing, I guess, a unit with another family, but you're gonna have the garages separating you, so it'll have a feel of a single-family home. We believe we're compatible with the surrounding area. You do have the office development sensitive in the layout of the duplexes to be sensitive to the people to the north. I know there's 2 residents that back up to there. We're keeping most of those units a far distance away from them. We're going to put some screening up as well, as we show on that preliminary plan. We also believe it's consistent with your master plan. I know your plan may not been updated recently, but I know there's a provision in there that I found. Talked to Alan about this. I'm a former city planner, so I actually read community plans. I find them interesting. A lot of people don't, but they're interesting. So I read the housing component of your master plan, and there's some stated policies and programs under the housing component. I just want to read one of them because it lines right up with this. It says, the city should encourage and promote the development of the Three Meadows project by utilizing flexible design and zoning in this area with regard to different types of residential development. So I'm not exactly sure what the date of that plan was. I think it was pre-pandemic, 18, something like that, but I still think it's valid today. That property, in our view, is it's a good transition. The 2-family attached units there, nice transition as you're coming into the neighborhood, single-family detached in the back. So we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. West. Don't go too far. I'm sure people got questions. I got one right from the get. I guess I'm not a developer, but I don't understand what makes that area conducive to duplexes, but not to single-family homes. I don't understand the logistics in that. I guess I feel like if you can build on it, you can build on it. And my concern is that I just don't want to see this be where we approve this, duplexes get built over there, and then we come back a year later from now and say, oh, the duplexes were a huge success, now we just want to do duplexes through the whole thing.
So I guess when I say it's not conducive, typically when you do a subdivision, you're talking about extension of public roads, municipal utilities, platting it at lot sizes. I think the way windswept drive is to bring that drive in and then curl it, I guess, back around out to Hidden Meadows, it's just not. There's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of roadway there, and you're not going to get a lot yield that's going to make that economically feasible. In this arrangement, these duplexes would be on a single deed, so there'd be rental homes on a single deed. So you're not subdividing the land. We're arranging them along Hidden Meadows. There's 4 duplex units or buildings, if you will, along Hidden Meadows, and then 2 in the middle part. You can't do that under a single-family detached type of arrangement. You have to subdivide it either through a plat or a site condominium. So we keep the infrastructure down, we're utilizing the existing infrastructure that's out there without the added street and utility cost.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. West? Dave?
Just to talk about what the property is currently zoned. As was mentioned, it was zoned for commercial previously. It's because the lot is kind of an awkward size to put single-family homes on it. So the EDC actually rezoned it to basically sell it and build 2 single-family homes on there. Well, and that was done a period ago, probably a couple of years, I think, thereabouts. And that came in front of council when it was rezoned. But for a project like this, the lot size is out there. In the back, there's a lot more space to work with, 20 acres or so. So you can put and design the roads in a single family layout. Where here it's just not practical on the lot size and dimensions.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions for Councilman Wolfram?
So we're not considering rezoning the rest of the projects, there's still just this area here that we rezone.
Correct.
Any more questions? Councilman Palladino?
To clarify, you said 1 deed per duplex.
No, it would be the 4-acre parcel. We would have 6 duplexes on there, so it would be almost like an apartment type of situation where you're not subdividing the land for each duplex. You could go back and condominiumize it in the future if it was to be sold. I know there's an interest in owner-occupied homes too, so you could build it like this and then just go back later and create a condominium unit out of it. In my previous community that I worked for, we had several developments that were apartments. We came back later, condominiumized
so under the current setup, this would be corporately owned, but
Correct.
you could potentially have owners, well, you would have a landlord and a tenant in each of the 6 properties.
Yeah, for the term of the pilot, and then at that point, I guess we evaluate whether we want to sell them as condominiums or re-up with a pilot again.
Thank you.
Did you have something to add?
I was just gonna make sure that Councilman Paladino understood when he was talking about turning into condominiums. They would not be a landlord-tenant relationship then, they would actually, each unit would be owned by an owner. Like, many people, when they think of condominiums, they think of like an apartment building, right? And each of the separate units are gonna be sold. And if I buy an apartment or a condominium unit, I own that unit. I might not own the ground upon which it sits, but I own the unit. And you can do the same thing with duplexes, or single-family homes. Instead of subdividing it and platting it, you do a site condominium development. As a matter of fact, Commonwealth developments, up here, Hillsdale Commons, that's the way it's set up. Those are duplexes. It's a site condominium project. So each person owns the unit. So that's what he's talking about. At some point, if you want to sell them to people as opposed to having a tenant relationship, that would be the mechanism.
Right, I see that. I guess I'm just saying, best case scenario, you would have an owner, but they're likely not gonna occupy both sides of the duplex.
Well, no, each side of the duplex would be a unit. So
The deeds could be separated within the 6 properties, not only among the 6.
The Hillsdale Commons development on Bacon that's the way they are. So they're duplexes, but each side of the duplex is a unit, and you own a unit.
That's how Stony Oaks over there is done too. Yeah, that's.
And it's working. Stowe's moving right along, selling properties as it's going, so that's a positive too.
Any more questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. West. We'll now open the podium. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. And remember, this is public comment only for rezoning of 440 and 450 Hidden Meadows Drive. Podium is now open.
Missy Darden, Hillsdale Community Thrift. I have no problem with development. Development is how we move forward in progress. The one thing though that I love that everybody is paying attention to is obviously that we need housing. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you love. $2,000 a month, I can't think of one person, and I know a lot of people who would spend $2,000 a month for something that they do not own. I don't even pay that much for my mortgage. That is something that is instilled in us when we are kids. One of your biggest investments is going to be your home, and that is something that you build equity in. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to any kind of development, but the kind of development that we need in this town is actual affordable housing. Correct me if I'm wrong, our median income in this town is $44,000, if I'm not mistaken, that median income. They cannot afford $2,000 a month for housing. So if you're gonna increase rent over there, and I know, like you said, you're worried that people are gonna go over and switch over to that. My gut feeling is these homes won't even be filled. There is not enough people in this town that are looking for $2,000 worth a month for rent. What they need is affordable rent. And Jackson just built and partnered with Habitat for Humanity, who used to be in Hillsdale. They're building 100 affordable homes. And when I mean affordable, these people are buying them. They actually are, they're doing all of the funding with Habitat for Humanity. They partnered with the state. They got federal funding to do this so that it was actually affordable for people to own these homes. That is something that we need in this town. As you all know, I have 13 homeless now, At my establishment, the number changes daily. I now have 2 children on the property. These people who are in need of homes, who are partnering in other homes that are single-family homes, are actually multi-family homes because people have to live together. What we need in this town is true affordable to our median income. Not Ann Arbor, not Spring Arbor, not Adrian. We are Hillsdale. We can't change our people. It has to be affordable to the clientele. Now, I'm all about building houses and letting people buy them. The Commonwealth are beautiful over there. It's not something that I can afford, but I bought a home that is, was it 40 years old, 40, 50 years old, and we're fixing it up. But that's my equity. That'll be my retirement someday. But we also have a group of people in our town who cannot and will never be able to afford $2,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy. Any more public comment?
Joseph Hendy, 181 Ray Street. I kind of have to agree with Missy on this. You're targeting one certain class of individuals. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any more public comment? Okay, we'll close the podium. I'll say, we're renting right now, and that's not too far off from what we're paying, honestly. And it took us 6 months to find this place, and let's see, we looked at a 3-bedroom basement apartment for $1,600, and we looked at a 3-bedroom house for $1,500. Now, hopefully these places won't actually be $2,000, but we're working class people. We both work a lower middle class job, and that's not too far from what the housing market in Hillsdale is right now for working families where both people work. And nobody's an entrepreneur that's making $100,000 a year. So, do you have something to add, Dave?
Just a couple things I wanted to point out. The $2,000 that's being kind of talked about, that isn't what the developers proposed. That came from Mr. Palladino. That's not necessarily what these are going to run for. Based on what our knowledge of the projects, it will be less than that, based on looking at houses that they have for rent in other communities and how this pilot helps make them somewhat affordable. In regards to the Habitat for Humanity housing with federal dollars, if there's any federal dollars, it's tied to income restrictions. So those folks they might be getting a mortgage to buy that house, but it's because of their income eligibility, which is, I would venture to say, lower than what we have here. So they are, I would guarantee that it's lower than what we have here. I think it's important to mention that this has gone through the Planning Commission. They had a public hearing on June 21st in a public meeting, and they are recommending the rezoning to the council.
Thanks, Dave. I don't think anybody in council actually thought that the rents were going to be $2,000 a house, but.
Just wanted to make that clear to the public.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so that this limit for example, for 4-person at 2,145, that's a maximum. That's not what is expected the rent to be once the properties are actually out and being rented.
That is correct.
Any more comments, questions? Remember, this is the rezoning, we're voting on the zoning right now. So, any comments, questions about that? I need a motion if we're going to vote. Oh, well, we'll have the vote and then we'll close the vote. I closed the podium already.
I just made a motion to be supported.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Soha, to approve the rezoning of 440 and 450 Hidden Meadows Drive. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Yes. Councilmember Sharp?
Yes.
Soha?
Yes.
Stuchel?
Yes.
Wolfram?
Yes.
Mayor Stocker?
Yes.
Councilperson Morrissey?
Yes.
Palladino?
No.
And Pratt? Yes. 7-1, that's approved, it's ordinance 2023-05.
Thank you, Katie. All right, we will close the public hearing and we'll move out of introduction and adoption of ordinances public hearing and move into old business. Item A, Operations Governance Committee BPU Board Recommendation. ONG Chair is Councilman Morrissey, correct? So,
I think you have it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have a memo from me summarizing the results of the meeting we had. And I also appended a memo that I originally had put to the Operations and Governance Committee to read. There's one correction. I said currently 4 out of 5 members are out of city residents. It's actually 5 out of 5. I was misinformed, but it's 5 out of 5. So anyway, and I believe the mayor spoke at that meeting and he agrees with the recommendations, I believe, that we've made, which is to recommend that we use our discretion. We can go either way with this. There's nothing that says we have to go with the charter. There's nothing that says we have to not go with the charter. So it gives maximum freedom to the mayor and council to appoint people according to the criteria that they want moving forward.
thank you, Councilman Morrissey. Yeah, I appreciate you guys meeting on it. I think it's unfortunate that all 5 members reside outside the city limits. I'm not sure if that's in the best interest of the city. I most certainly don't want the Board of Public Utilities members to feel like they're being challenged or under attack. That was never the purpose of any of it. All those appointments came through me and came to council first, and they were all based on recommendations from the Board of Public Utilities. So I'd also like to point out that we were never talking about changing all the boards because, for instance, the Airport Advisory Committee doesn't have requirements that members are city residents. The reason that we were specifically talking about this board wasn't because we were singling them out. It's because the charter says for this specific board that all the members should be residents of the city. And for the sake of not disrupting anything, everybody thinks the Board of Public Utilities does a great job. I'll be 100% honest. I never checked the residencies of the members when they came across my desk, so I could have just as easily said, oh, 4 members are not city residents, so this next appointment should be a city resident, and I never did that because the board seems to be running very well. And also, honestly, since Dave Mackey's been over at Board of Public Utilities, then I have a whole lot of faith that the Board of Public Utilities is being run in a transparent, accountable, and responsible way. So I guess what we really have determined is at the end of this, moving forward, that way we're not singling out board members, kicking anybody off the board, making Board of Public Utilities members feel like they're not appreciated for their volunteer job that requires a lot of hours of work. We appreciate what you guys do. That just moving forward, as long as I'm mayor, I'm going to try to make appointments that are residents of the city because I want to honor what the spirit of the charter says. So we've got several appointments coming up in the next few years, and we're going to try to get some city residents on that board. I think it's good we looked into this, and I feel good about it. I think it's always a good thing when council tries to hold itself more accountable. And I think, in retrospect, looking back, if I would have been paying attention a little more, I would not, most certainly have not brought 5 non-residents to serve, to council to be appointed to serve on a board of a company that's owned by the city residents. Appreciate ONG looking into this, and any discussion? Councilman Wolford.
I thought regarding the relationship between the city charter and state statute was very clear.
And I ought to point out that I ran that past our city attorney to make sure that actually it was right, in addition to being clear. So he gets a good deal of credit for that too. We did have some questions at the LNG meeting that we asked Dave to look into about the way it's being provided, people are being compensated, that kind of thing, with social security, all that. Could you speak to that, Dave?
We don't have an official answer on that yet, and it's because the amount that they get paid, which is $25 a meeting, falls under the IRS guidelines for issuing like a 1099, and they're not, that's how they were being paid is through the 1099 process, but they never actually physically took a check. So that amount was donated to a third party. So we've talked to a couple accountants, and ultimately I think we're going to end up at the IRS to kind of get clarification, because we have an example of this where our elections workers kind of fall under the same boat. They only work potentially a couple times a year, and they fall underneath that guideline. And in their case, the IRS wanted us to pay them with a check with no taxes removed, because the amounts were so small that they felt it was easier. So we're in the process of trying to figure out the best way to do it, and we should have hopefully an answer next month for the board. One last thing I just want to mention, as we talk about this last appointment, which was I believe in May, that came about when Lois Howard had retired from the board, her term was up. The board had two applications that had been presented. One was from a finance professional that worked at County National Bank, Eric Potes, who was appointed. And the second was an engineer, similar to the other two board members, with a mechanical engineering degree. And I believe he might actually live in the community, but the board interviewed both of them, and based on the fact that we were losing the board was losing a finance person, they recommended the banker, to Mayor Stockford. I don't think anyone really looked at that point of officially lived in the city at that time. But that's the process the board had went through. They interviewed both of them and then made a recommendation.
I think the board's doing a good job, and I think that we inherited a policy that I don't think this council would have adopted itself, but I think, you inherited a policy, I inherited a policy, and moving forward, I'd like to especially put a focus on getting some city residents on that board as people's terms run out. So, and Bob, I'm sorry, it seemed like you're a little defensive, it seemed like Phil was a little defensive, like maybe, somebody's trying to gut the board. It's nothing like that, but maybe moving forward, as you guys have new board recommendations, maybe we could work together on finding people that live in the city to try and honor the spirit of the charter. Because I'm sure there's qualified people that live in the city of Hillsdale. I don't think you did anything wrong, I don't think the board did anything wrong, I don't think Dave Mackey's done anything wrong, or council. I just think that there's nothing wrong with saying, maybe this is not the way that we should have been doing this in the past. Councilman Morrissey?
On the other extreme, it would be very imprudent to just wipe out the board and put a whole new board on it in short order.
Of course.
It disrupts the governance of the BPU. It makes sense to do it that way. That would be that would not be good management of the utility.
Yes, sir.
Just quickly to couple points. This policy had been put in place back in 2000, so it's been in place for a substantial amount of time. It's important to note that basically every year they have a board member that term comes up, like Bob. His term will be up next May, I believe, and then subsequent year there's another one. So it is a continuous process.
Councilman Sharp.
The one thing we want to make sure that whoever is put on that board, they understand what they're getting themselves into, because it's very complex what they're dealing with, water, sewer, electric, the rates, the purchasing of equipment and everything else. There's a lot of money involved in that. And yes, the BPU does make money, but it also puts out the money too in buying all this equipment. So we have to make sure we always appoint qualified people through that, which we have in the past, and we need to continue to do so. And even if it's just 3 city residents, we have 2 outside the city. That covers the requirement too if we have to, because they definitely want somebody that's a BPU member or a customer on that board. It should be. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Questions? Councilman Palladino?
Let's just make sure that I think you described them as volunteers, let's just make sure they are not volunteers so that we don't violate state law while we're also violating the charter.
Any more questions, comments? Okay, so moving forward, as we get into more Board of Public Utility appointments, then I feel like we need to have a focus on appointing city residents. And then we're still waiting on clarification on how we're going to pay the board members to call them employees.
How the IRS would want that classified and done, whether it's, because they have a W-2 employee and they have 1099 self-employed, and that's how it was done historically. It was through that self-employed process, and then it was directly donated to charity. So we want to clarify that, how that should be done.
Any more questions? Councilman Palladino.
At minimum, could we at least make sure that the checks are delivered directly into their hands, but even if no other changes need to be made, and if they need to cut a check to them, it just seems like giving it directly to someone. I don't see how there's any way you could classify them as an employee under that arrangement.
How it had been processed in the past is there was a form that was attached to the check that was cut to the third-party nonprofit, and it had whoever was at that meeting, and then $25 for their component, up to 5, so up to $125. That was donated basically in their name directly to the action agency. So that being said, we're going to clarify that process. Like again, it's been in place since 2000 to make sure that it's done properly.
That would be the best thing. Any more questions, comments? We don't need to hold a vote. All right, we'll move into old business item letter B, school resource officer agreement. Chief.
Evening. If you remember last December, I believe it was, we presented to you for vote us entering into, or the city agreeing for us to partner with the local Hillsdale Community School District to apply for a grant opportunity that the state had offered for us to get into the school resource officer program. And the state at that time, the grant was to provide 50% of all costs, that's salary, training, and benefits for 3 years for this. At that time, time the school district applied, you guys approved, the school district applied. Along with that was if you were approved, there has to be a memorandum of agreement between the police department and the school district. The state put out a template for that, which we worked off from, along with, I received several examples, if you will, of prior agreements and current existing agreements from other police departments. We went through those. In the state template, there were several sections that were required to be in this agreement. Some of them gave specific language that language had to be under that section. Other ones just said, you gotta have a section that covers this topic. Mr. Mackey, Sean Vondrel, superintendent of the school district, myself, met. We went through those. Some did not apply to us. We need a language. We agreed on the agreement and the language in that at that time. We presented that. It went to the school. It went to their lawyer. It came back. We did our changes. It went to our city attorney. We're at the point where we have the agreement with the language specific that doesn't catch anybody in a bind. And this is a requirement. What's before you today, that agreement is for you to approve in basic, that you agree to it and I sign it, and then the superintendent, the school district signs it, and we will be moving forward with the program the 1st of August.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief? Councilman Palladino?
When the grant expires, how will the payments be divided?
That all depends on if we approve continuing the program.
So currently, we're getting a 50% grant, and the school is paying the other 50%?
25%. The city's paying 25%.
And we're
the
paying
school
25%.
district's paying an additional 25% on top of the state's 50%.
So this doesn't guarantee a 50-50 split afterward. We'd have to negotiate that. Okay. Thank you.
Any more discussion?
Yep.
Councilman Sharp?
It's a sad world we live in, and we have to do this. We actually bring police officers into school, but it's the real world too now. So there's nothing else we can do but provide safety for our children that are in school. Because if we don't, we're gonna be the ones getting blamed. So thank you, Scott.
This is for immediate security, if you will, but there's a lot more components to what the school resource officer will be responsible for. A lot of it is things we already do. I do some of that in my capacity, which is work with them every year, updating their emergency response planning that has to go to the state, which they get their grants from. Site security, doing security assessments. We have to do mandatory lockdown drills at the school, so they'll be responsible for managing those. The officers on the road will assist as necessary. They'll be handling all the criminal complaints that occur within our schools in our district. So there's a lot more than just, they will be doing the security officer component, but there's a lot more that they will be responsible for, and that's covered in the agreement, and that will be covered in our local policy.
Thank you, Chief. Any more questions for the Chief? Comments? Do I have a motion to approve the agreement? Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Wolfram. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Councilmember Solbach. Stuchel.
Yes.
Wolfram.
Yes.
Mayor Stockford.
Yes.
Councilperson Morrissey.
Yes.
Palladino.
Yes.
Pratt. Yes. And Sharp.
Yes.
8-0 approves.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Chief. Appreciate your work on this. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Item letter A, Airport MDOT AWOS contract. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have Ginger come up because she's our airport manager and expert in flying. But so this is coming forward because the previous 5-year contract that we had with MDOT for the AWOS maintenance is up. So this is the replacement 5-year contract, and as such, we kind of put together what the cost responsible for. And it's less than $2,000 a year, but it's a critical piece of equipment, and I'll let Ginger explain that.
Well, the AWOS stands for Automated Weather Observation System. And what it is, it takes real-time weather and disseminates it all over the nation. So pilots can do their pre-flight planning and see how weather's changing and if they even want to take the flight. It goes through two different channels. One is a VHF frequency that has a dedicated frequency that is in the airplane that they tune into, and the other is a dedicated phone line, so you can call in anytime and get that. MDOT does all the maintenance and does the inspections. They do half-year inspections, and anytime we have a problem with it, they're right on it, or they walk us through it on the phone so we can fix it ourselves. It's a very important part of aviation, which allows the instrument, people to come in, the jets and different things to come in and lower minimums and that type of thing.
Awesome. Thank you, Ginger. Any questions for Ginger? Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Morrissey, to approve the airport MDOT AWOS contract. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Councilmember Stuchel.
Yes.
Wolfram.
Yes.
Mayor Stockford.
Yes.
Councilperson Morrissey.
Yes.
Palladino.
Yes.
Pratt. Yes. Sharp.
Yes.
And Solomon.
Yes.
8-0 approved. It's resolution 3562.
3562, thank you, Katie. Okay, we'll move on to new business item B, airport terminal contractor award. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. The first individual I'm going to ask to come up is our representative from RSNH, our aviation engineer. That's kind of critical in getting us through or to this particular point in the process. I've asked him to talk about basically the FAA putting us under the gun to really work quickly to get them a project that they would spend their money or provide the federal grant to. So Mike, if you could walk the council through that process.
Thanks, Dave. Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Brzezinski with RSNH, project manager for this project, the new terminal at Hillsdale Airport. We're located in 436 South Main Street, Plymouth, Michigan. So as Dave was speaking of, we've been working with Dave and Ginger since last November with this whole process of applying for the bill grant through the FAA for $2.5 million to develop a new terminal facility at the airport. Our original schedule that was submitted to the FAA to get this done was to have design start in March of this year. We had the project out for bids in August of this year and have bids in hand by the end of September to meet the FAA's procurement deadlines typically. They typically have that deadline by the end of September. Once the funding was approved in March, the FAA laid some conditions on us. First of all was they wanted bids in hand by the end of June. So they basically cut 3 months out of our schedule to get this done. So we had to quickly move to get our design completed on this project to meet their deadlines. As a result of our effort, we surprisingly had 4 contractors bid on this project, which right now is almost unheard of with a lot of projects going on around here. So that was a great success, just getting that involvement from the different contractors. The low bid was evaluated, it was deemed responsive. We provided the FAA all their documentation information by their deadline, and we've accomplished that goal. And we're ready to move forward with the project.
Oh, thank you, sir. Any questions? Councilman Sharp.
Did they require the other two to do the same thing? Detroit, I think it was Traverse City?
They had different processes that they were working with for different types of projects. I'm not well versed in what their deadlines were. We were just focusing on getting Hillsdale.
Correct. I was just wondering, because there's only 3 in the state of Michigan that were approved.
That's correct.
So I just wanted to make sure they hit it too.
Well, it's important to mention, we were the only terminal that was funded. So they'd received monies for different type of projects, where ours was the only actual terminal award for funds.
Any more questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Council discussion? Councilman Soha.
So can you help me understand the city's share of the project? I see that it's slightly underneath what the airport improvement fund is, but why is the city responsible for?
So I'm probably gonna have Mike come up and support me on this, because it's actually a fair, and Ginger and I learned this with this project. But it's a complicated math process with the FAA, so they cover percentages of eligible space. So you have to determine whether a space is eligible based on their criteria to be funded. And it's a percent that they will fund, and then it's a percent on top of that for the eligible space. So like, for example, your office in there, one would think that that would be eligible, but actually the office where the manager and the help work out of is not fundable. So we had to pull that percentage of the building out of the project for funding. So, but that's why the dollar amounts are kind of different. You know, when you talk about the 2.5 million, it's been, you know, we're based on what we've proposed, we're getting the full 2.5 million. But to do that, our share on top of that is about 507 to 600,000, depending on how it ultimately is negotiated. And as I put in the memo, you know, the airport has been saving their revenues from fuel sales and other things for the past 6 or 7 years to prepare for this, because it's a critical component of the airport master plan, which every year goes through MDOT and comes to the council for approval. So that being said, that money was built up just for this particular time to move forward. The numbers are fairly close. Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
There's an MDOT share that's going into this as well.
So that, but it's very little
It's $60,000
compared to ours.
Would you remind me in the master plan, is there any consideration for building hangars or anything, especially in the winter months?
There is. It's actually, there's some design, but it's in future phases. So this is our next phase of our master plan. Then subsequently, there's a demolition of the old terminal, the old hangars, and then we get into the potential for new hangars. But in the meantime, we're also working with private investors who potentially want to invest in developing private hangars.
Thank you, Mayor. So any future development, the city's investment will come out of this fund. So we'll have to work with that. Should.
That's right.
Any more questions? No, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. What happens if the project goes to 3.4?
So we're going to be focusing on managing this project and watching every dime that gets spent on it very closely. We're going to be involved with, as part of the construction administration services, which we currently have a proposal in for. So we work with the contractor to make sure they're delivering the project for their bid price through a series of reviews, submittals, requests for information, and so forth. So we're keeping careful track of how everything's done. And if there's opportunities for us to improve upon reducing the city's share, we will certainly do that as well.
So you're a glorified bean counter, you'll be.
Actually, I'm project manager, but as you get into project management, yeah, you start counting more beans as you go on. I'm a licensed architect by trade, but yeah.
The other question I have is, where will this terminal be built? Located to the new pad out, or the runway out there?
The new apron, yeah, that was just built. And the apron, I think it's important to mention, the apron was placed there, and the new terminal is also being built in that location adjacent to it to get it far farther away from the runway to improve on safety at the airport. So the further away we can get the building from actual operations, the safer the airport will be.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
Was there any consideration made in drainage and how that was a major issue 2 winters ago with some significant flooding and damage to residents that are outside of the city? It's a big, very complicated issue with the other county drains and stuff, but I was just curious if that's been a major concern or consideration.
We have actually been working closely with Dave and Ginger and some of the local folks in the area to address that very issue. And we have addressed it as part of the grading plan on the master site plan for this project.
I like hearing that.
More questions, comments? Thank you, sir. Okay, do I have a motion to award the terminal construction contract to Collaward Group LLC? Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilman Sharp. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Councilmember Wolfram.
Yes.
Mayor Stocker.
Yeah.
Councilman Morrissey.
Yes.
Palladino.
Yes.
Pratt.
Yes.
Sharp.
Yes.
Soha. Institutional.
Yes.
8-0 all approved.
Thank you, Katie. All right, we'll move into item C, new business, BPU industrial substation transformer upgrade. Excuse me, Jake. Hey, Jake, it's been a while. Seems like it has.
Been missing you probably. Basically we've determined that best course of action long-term will be to upgrade the transformer to the industrial sub, which is really one piece of a pretty major reliability upgrade for us. Also has great potential to allow us to recover quicker from storm events such as ice storms that tend to happen. It could also not only flexibility, reliability, and minimizing outages. This transformer was in the budget. We were in for $2 million, so the base bid came in under budget, even with some spare parts. Let's see what else I have in here. Under budget. The other big thing for us is our system's primarily fed off of 2 transformers from the power plant. This will give us a third option that the entire system can be fed from any one of those 3 and share that load. Also to spread load of equipment failures or any vandalism that could happen. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of that in the news. And a very key point would be there's about a 3-year delivery on this. So that's why we want to get this in place and then proceed with the other 2 components, which would be tying feeders into it, and also putting the appropriate protections and breakers in that substation. Ultimately allowing us to do things like hot switching without taking outages for that. Maybe not a huge issue to get a blanket your home, but it's a huge issue for our industrial customers. Again, there's 4 feeders come out of the power plant substation. There's 1 feeder comes out of the industrial sub. Ultimately, we'll be able to feed any one of those 5 feeders from either location, and or all of them from one location if need be. And the final piece would be the geographic location of the industrial substation. The 46,000 volt line that comes out of Moore Road, that'd be the shortest path to feed us power from the outside world. So again, a catastrophic type storm event, it'd be the quickest place to get that back up because it's the shortest distance. Even if we had to rebuild it from scratch, we could probably do that in a matter of days. Rebuilding that all the way to the power plant, we're probably talking weeks. So many different angles, I guess, to look at here, and without going into crazy depth, I guess I'm going to leave it out there for questions at this point, unless David has anything to add.
It's important to mention that the BPU board has evaluated this order and is recommending to council that we move forward. As Jake said, this is for reliability, efficiency, And as that letter I read earlier from Phil at Cobra, they're when he was referring to power outages as part critical to their business, that was what he was referring to is that some of the reliability of our industrial substation and that current transformer. This going to this new setup will provide more reliability for our customers. Thus, we can help try to attract more businesses. In his case, they specialize in things like 3D metal printing. And when power would go out, if it's not returned back on like within 45 minutes, they have to basically scrap a part that they've been printing for days. And so we're talking thousands of dollars. So, we do have an older system, and what the board has been working on with Jake and I has been to increase and upgrade it for that reliability. Jake?
I forgot a couple other key points. This transformer is made in Ohio, which is a big deal. Doesn't have to bounce down the road from another country or halfway across the country. And the final thing is, we had this bid two ways. We had it bid as a 25 MVA and also as a 30. The current unit's about a 12. So we're also adding future capacity out there to the system, whether it be industrial park development, even development in Osceola or Pittsford. This will help us with, we can shift load from the power plant to the industrial and free up capacity at the power plant. So long term, we talk about our electric futures, whether it be cars or whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter, but we're all adding more TVs and microwaves and things that use power every day. So we want to make sure we're staying ahead of that. Always have that capacity to provide our customers with reliable power even under future load situations.
Thanks, Jake.
Any more questions for Jake or Dave? Do I have a motion to award the board the purchase of the 30 MVA transformer from the low bidder OTC Services? Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilwoman Pratt. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Mayor Stockford.
Yes.
Councilperson Morrissey.
Yes.
Palladino.
Yes.
Pratt. Yes. Sharp.
Yes.
Soha.
Yes.
Stuchel.
Yes.
And Wolfram.
Yes.
8-0 approved.
Thank you, Katie. All right, we'll move to new business item letter D. 2023 sidewalk project, North and Northwest Street. Kristen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in several months ago, Jason approached me about wanting to do a sidewalk project in front of the Hilltop Apartments at the corner of West and Westwood, Westwood and North area. In addition, I've noticed that we have 5 steps that come down the public right-of-way. So I asked him to expand this project to include removal and replacement of those steps with an ADA compliant ramp. Steps in the public right-of-way are not ADA compliant, so we need to consistently keep working to remove these. We asked for bids to be due back on July 10th. We officially received no bids for this project, as we're seeing contractors are very busy this year. But I had a conversation with a local bidder about 4 hours prior to this bid date that he had already put together a price, but he was otherwise occupied on an emergency construction project for the city, so he did not submit his bid. I approached him after the bid to review his bid to see it, as it aligned with my engineer's estimate. It was within like 5% of my engineer's estimate. That being said, we're approaching you to accept this bid from the local bidder to get this project done this year rather than going back out to bid. The money's in place. We want to get this project done. It's been on the books for a year and a half with the Hilltop Apartments, and so we want to move forward with this project this year if at all possible.
Very good. Thank you, Kristen. Any questions for Kristen? Councilman Sharp.
It's about damn time we started doing some more sidewalks. They voted for, I don't know how many budgets, put 50,000 aside, and nothing ever got done, so about time.
Been trying, been busy.
Any more questions for Kristen? Councilman Saad.
Do the apartments have any responsibility financially towards
Yes,
this?
well, yes, they are responsible per our ordinance to pay for a portion of it, and they've committed 23,000 and some odd change to the project.
Any more questions? questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Kristen. Do I have a motion to award the unit price project?
Second.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Morrissey. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Councilmember Morrissey.
Yes.
Palladino.
Yes.
Pratt. Yes. Sharp.
Yes.
Soha. Stuchel.
Yes.
And Wolfram.
Yes.
And Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
All approved, 8-0.
Thank you, Katie. All right. New business item letter E, Social District Local Government Approval, Kiefer House Hotel LLC. Sam.
Thank you, Mayor. So just like the last meeting, this is just simply another resolution that would authorize the Dawn Theater, Kiefer House Hotel LLC. They're the entity that is managing the Dawn Theater. It would allow them to apply for a social district permit. So we've already had 2 businesses within the city apply for that. The Pub and Grub and then Hillsdale Brewing Company. So the Dawn Theater would like to be the 3rd business to participate in that district. So by state rules, they have to have this authorization in order to apply for that and start serving once everyone gets their permits.
Awesome. Any questions for Sam? Motion to approve the resolution. Motion on the floor from Councilman Wolfram, seconded by Councilman Stuchel. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we'll move into new business item letter F, Hendy FOIA appeal. Dave, and I see Joe's here too, so Joe, did you want to come up to the podium?
I just asked council to waive the FOIA fees. Your FOIA coordinator violated the FOIA process. He never asked for a extension in writing, which he was supposed to do by the law. And that's all I have.
Okay, Joe. Mr. Hendy asked me to read, actually he asked me to include a letter in the packet, which I dropped the ball on. It says, Mayor and Council, in regards to the city violating the charter in this chicanery with the state loophole, the city is not legal on the state loophole. 1099s are not legal city employees, and as such, the city is not legal as it stands right now. The entire board and all its votes up until now and until it's fixed are illegal, and 20 years of votes have been invalidated. The city has not only violated our charter by saying they're using the state statute, but is violating the state statute they claim to be bypassing our charter with. Mr. Mackey has changed his story. First he said he was writing these board members checks and telling them not to catch them, then Mackey in return would just go ahead and donated their money to the CAA, Community Action Agency. At ONG, he backpedaled on that. These people, if you make them employees, will need a W-2 form, taxes withheld, workman's comp, and Social Security taken out of their checks. As it is right now, it may or may not be considered tax evasion by acting in bad faith and sidestepping our charter and sidestepping the state statute because they are not legal employees of the city and haven't been legal employees in the 20 years. Also, if these people are contractors, did the city send out the 1099 form so that they can pay their share of taxes owed? Again, public officials saying stand on your own 2 feet, yet are just fine with the rest of us paying their fair share of tax obligations. Joseph Hendy. Any discussion on this, or did you have anything to add to this, Dave?
Sure. Just to be clear, it wasn't myself who said anything about asking them to hold the check. That was actually the mayor's comment at that meeting. It did not come from me, so you can check the videos on that if they were up and running. Also, Mr. Hendy's appeal was for FOIA denial and part was for information that he had requested, where he asked for employment contracts, the pay stubs, proving they were employees. The city does not have that information, so I denied his FOIA based on we don't have it. So if we don't have information, we don't have to create it. So that's why his FOIA was in part denied, was because he was asking for something that doesn't exist. Now, Mr. Hendy may have an opinion on the way he believes things should work, but I'll get my opinion from the IRS and how they want that to be handled. But again, I never said they were asked to hold their checks, because I would know that that wasn't necessarily accurate.
Any discussion on this?
What are we voting on?
Joe's asking for his FOIA fees to be waived because he didn't receive the things that he asked for, and because the city didn't fill the FOIA in the amount of time prescribed by law and didn't ask for an extension.
How can the city charge a fee if there was nothing, just for the time searching?
I don't know the answer to
I
that.
believe there were some things provided and some things there just didn't exist.
What kind of fee are we talking?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Joe,
Yes.
do you know what the amount of the fees was?
I believe it was $19. They're supposed to charge in 15-minute increments, and if it's gonna take longer than the FOIA laws require, they have to ask for an extension in writing, which never took place. So, I mean, I feel like this is almost like a culture with the city. You've got illegal BPU board members, and then you're not even following the FOIA laws.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Any more discussion, Councilman Wolfram?
Is the amount of the fee, how much is the amount of the fee? Is it $19?
It's $19. I'm inclined to vote to grant Mr. Hendy his appeal on his money. Councilman Stuchel.
You know, the FOIA, I mean, we appreciate citizens who want to get involved, to take chance, but when they ask us to spend our time in our treasure as well, they have to be accepted to pay for that as well, so no.
Well, I understand completely. FOIAs take a lot of time, and some residents put forth more FOIAs than other residents do. Councilman Stuchel. I'm sorry.
It's okay, thank you, Mayor. Could you just speak to Mr. Hendy's accusation about not providing the material in the time, or asking for an extension as he suggests?
Actually, I don't have an answer to that. I don't necessarily process all the FOIAs myself, and we get quite a few of them. Why this one took over the 5 days, and it's not our typical process. But I will say that we've had other FOIA appeals that have come to the board, and council has said, the city has done the work and required them to pay for them.
Question for Dave. I would assume it'll probably cost you more than $19 to process them a $19 check.
Any more discussion? Okay. Well, I'm inclined to grant Mr. Hendy's appeal because we didn't fulfill the FOIA request in the amount of time that we are supposed to. But if nobody else is, then
I'm fine with that.
then I'll make the motion to grant him his appeal.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Can I have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilmember Palladino.
Yes.
Pratt. Yes. Sharp.
No.
Soha.
No.
Stuchel.
No.
Wolfram.
Yes.
Mayor Stockford.
Yes.
And Councilperson Morrissey.
Yes.
It's approved.
Okay. Joe, your FOIA appeal was approved.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to new business item G, library cleaning contract. Is Jessica here? I did not see her. Can anybody else speak to this? Dave?
I will speak to
Library board member.
basically as an addendum to our current cleaning contract to include the library. Previously, they've done their own cleaning, but with staffing issues and such, the board decided to move forward with amending the contract to include the library this has gone through the library board, and, but all contracts have to go to the city council. So,
Of course, Councilman Palladino, can you speak on this as a city councilwoman that serves on the library board as well?
Sure, the employees are hired as clerks and pages, and they're then being asked to, clean the bathrooms, so the money's there, they're excited to be able to focus on librarian duties.
Sounds fair enough. Any questions, comments?
You do a good job.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. Do I have a motion to approve the enclosed addendum to facilitate the extension of the cleaning services to the library? Motion on the floor from Councilman Palladino, seconded by Councilwoman Pratt. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Councilwoman Pratt? Yes. Councilman Sharp?
Yes.
Soha? Stuchel?
Yes.
Wolfram? Mayor Stockford?
Yes.
Councilperson Morrissey?
Yes.
And Palladino?
Yes.
8-0, it's approved.
Thank you, Katie. All right, miscellaneous reports. There's a host of appointments for EDC tonight. There's Ken Joswiak, is that how you pronounce that? Joswiak, who owns the former Lloyd Hoisers, which is now Hillsdale Buick GMC. Nolan Sullivan, Gianna Green, and then John Condon is a reappointment. We can separate these into the new appointments or the reappointments, or we can do them all at the same time. Let's do them all at the same time. Do I have a motion to approve some of the appointments? Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha to approve all 4 appointments, seconded by Councilwoman Pratt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we'll move into general public comment. During this time, the podium will be open. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium, and you can speak on whatever your heart so desires at this time. The podium's now open.
Go ahead.
Misty Dutch Jordan, Hillsdale Community Thrift. I wanted to update you on my campers that are on my property. Obviously, that is not a rumor, it's true. Before the ordinance was passed, obviously I went through and I pulled everyone off the trails so that they weren't subjected to either fines or whatever would come with it. Somebody did call the health department. We knew it would come. He did tell me who called. It was very interesting how it accidentally came out, but I'll deal with that on a different day. Anyway, it was said that I was throwing a drug fest out there and that I am allowing illegal selling of drugs. I can assure you that each and every person that is living on the property has been drug tested. I have a 0 tolerance for illegal use of alcohol or illegal drugs. And anybody who ever has tested positive has been removed from the property. They also have, they can go to rehab, but they can't stay on my property. And so there are 0 illegal drugs. And the other complaint was that I was not providing a bathroom and I was allowing them to relieve themselves in the woods. I can assure you that there is a porta potty and there is running water, and we're about ready to install a shower and an entire kitchen so that they have something. So with that being said, also that there was also multiple cops up there. There was cops up there one day. They actually had the wrong guy. They made a huge scene with huge rifles and everything else, arrested a young man that was in jail for 21 days, and then come to find out they had the wrong man. And then another time there was the cops, which I called, because a gentleman was acting not his normal self. And my suspicions were correct, and he actually had methamphetamine on him, and he was removed from the property and he was taken to jail. With that being said, the health department gave me 30 days. After that, I get a $200 fine a day. So I have a plan, and I will present that this week to Mr. Mackey, and then I will have something for you in 2 weeks. I'm not saying this as a threat because this is not a threat. I can't afford $200 a day as a fine. So with that being said, I will present you with something that I hope that we can come to an agreement upon, and then from there we have to take it to a state level. I'm prepared to do anything that it takes to keep these people off the trails. But if we can't come to some sort of agreement, something that we can work together with, I can't afford $200 a day. And they'll have to go somewhere else. And I know that's not what you want either. So hoping here in the next week, or this week, I'll have something with Mr. Mackey, and then I'm sure he'll share it with all of you, and then I will have something in 2 weeks. Also, I just wanted to update you on Union Street. There's a house there that has been getting some mail from the city. Sorry, I only have 3 minutes. Anyway, Hillsdale Community Thrift bought the paint for that house, and we're gonna scrape and paint. The gentleman had a massive stroke. The woman has major health issues. They can't afford or do it themselves, so we're gonna go ahead and take care of it. 2 houses down from that, the water broke on another home. They didn't know what to do. Young couple, they had no idea, first-time home buyers, they didn't know how to do it. We've gone through every single hoop that you can possibly think of. Come to find out, they have a secondary portion of their homeowner's insurance that we found, and guess what? The homeowner's insurance is gonna fix it. So now these people won't have to be evicted from their home because they don't have running water. So I just wanted to update you on that as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy. Any more public comment?
In regard to BPU, Mr. Mackey, you did say you cut them a check and you told them not to cash it, and then you would donate that money to CAA. Okay, so that's double accounting. You know that, right? And who takes the tax deduction for the donation to CAA? Are you giving it to your board members? I kind of doubt it. Next thing I really hate to mention, because I like the mayor and I like Stephanie, but we have a city nepotism policy now too that I'm not sure how that works out. I think council should speak about it. Stephanie's on a couple boards, or the library board, and I don't know what's going on with the homeless task force board, but again, why have policy if you're not going to follow it? Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any more public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Jennifer Weil, 2635 Winona Drive. We're right on the border between Hillsdale and Osceola. In short, we live on the Legacy Trail, and we would like to be on the agenda for the next meeting. We did not have time to prepare the proper paperwork, and I'm very new to Hillsdale and its process. I have observed, as a number of other people have, a significant amount of probable drug dealing, which is to say that when people drive into the park for 45 seconds to a minute and a half and turn around after meeting another car at the beach and leave, and then another car comes in, and the process is repeated, and that person leaves, and then another car comes in, and so on. Several times a night, multiple times a week, up to 3 o'clock in the morning. I can see, several of us can see this. It interrupts our sleep when they slam doors and when they talk loudly. I don't care what they do personally, as long as they don't infringe upon other people's rights to live their lives in peace. The park has closing times, and the beach has closing times. We are appealing to the council, since it is your property and the city's responsibility, to put up a lockable gate to at least prevent the automobile traffic from coming in after hours and conducting what is likely illegal business. And we will speak to the issue with more details if you will put us on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And yes, email me what you would like on the agenda, and make sure you copy the city clerk on it, and we'll make sure it's present on the next agenda, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
construction starts. I mean, it's a very simple process. You fill out a form with the township that's zoned and they probably charge like $25 and they approve it. It's not like they're not gonna approve it, but when you don't even go to them, it's like you're snubbing them. I mean, they're a government entity too, and they should get the same respect that you guys want to receive. The other thing I want to talk about is Mr. Saw talked about taxes, and there's a lot of properties that need to be reevaluated, especially in the Tifa district, that have been sold. They're being taxed for a lot less than what they actually sold for like 5 years ago. And then they've changed hands again. There's one I can think of that's on Main Street that's paying less taxes than one that's on a very small side street. I just don't understand that. The other thing I want to talk about taxes, Mr. Soha has a RV park right next to his house, basically. Yeah, and a bed and breakfast. I mean, they take RVs too, but they get 100% homestead, so they're not paying a special tax for that. That is a business, matter of speaking. I would think, and bed and breakfasts are fine in your house and everything as a business, but they should be taxed more or less as a business. There should be some tax in there to compensate the other guy that lives next door. Why should they pay the same rate as a business? I just don't agree with that. And I know in one of the townships, I know neighbors complained about a bed and breakfast. So when it was dealt with, the guy called individual in the government and said, why did I get a letter from the assessor? And it was said, well, because you're advertising as an Airbnb, which is a business, and for that reason you need to be taxed that way. I mean, it shouldn't be the same as the family that's struggling right next door to you to try to get by. And that would bring a lot of revenue. I mean, if you looked around into the city, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I can name 3 or 4 places in the city that get to 401 classification for taxes, and they're actually businesses running houses. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Any more public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the podium and move into the city manager's report. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. To answer Jack's question, the city will acquire all proper permits as part of our building process. We haven't asked for it yet because this was the design process that needed to go in front of the FAA. That process is subsequent and we'll move forward. This has to go to the Planning Commission for their approval. It will have to go to the county building inspector for the inspections and the building permits, and to Adams Township. So that will be addressed in due time. Secondly, just want to let council know that I was appointed as the board chair to the MSCPA board, and that consists of MSCPA consists of the consortium of Coldwater, Hillsdale, Marshall, and Clinton, our consortium for buying and power and making sure that it's done in accordance with all federal and state regulations. So I was reappointed as the chair to that board. Also, because I know some of the council members are aware of this and have asked, and it has gone to the Public Safety Committee, we will be installing a 4-way stop at Fayette in the northwest intersection. That came up at the Finance Committee meeting because we're going to be installing on the north and south sides blinking lights, LED stop signs to make sure people know because of the change. Because we have had a lot of accidents there and some pretty substantial ones. So I believe the signs are going to go in next week. And we'll be looking at a temporary TCO for that. So we have then have a period of time to see if this process works. Then I think intention is to bring it back after 90 days, extend it to next spring, and then look if it's made permanent or if it's doing what it's intended to do. Also at the next meeting, I believe it's intended to bring information to the council on the fall leaf collection. I know folks will start asking about that. And then one last thing I want to mention, I don't know how many of you have driven by the Meyer site and the progress that's going on. They actually have enclosed the gas station portion and are putting the walls up now for the actual store proper. So it's moving right along, and I think they're going to hit their timeline of getting the store open next spring. So it's looking well, and I just encourage you all to drive by there.
Thank the weather.
Yes, that's true too. With that, I'll take any questions council might have.
Any questions for Dave?
It'll be Myers. But, yes, so on the Kiefer, I do know that we've been working with them to get a better understanding of their timeline because of the different.
There's a letter to Tifa that they are saying spring of 2024, so that's why I said that. Yeah. So they're committing to the spring of 24.
Let's hope so. It is moving forward, just not as fast as anyone would like it, I think.
Any questions for Dave? All right, let's move on to council comment. Anybody got anything? Councilman Salah.
Just on the Kiefer House, I went and visited. I saw the general contractor there. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but that building, I don't know if you remember, but in the foundation and the basement, they couldn't get any equipment in there to fix this water problem, so everything had to be done by hand. And then they had to shore up the pillars and add more pillars to carry the weight of the building, because when the building was built, the pillars were here, but the walls were here. And so over the last 15 decades, those walls have been pushing down on the floor, and these huge 2x12s are split. There's like 3 2x12s pushed together, and they're all split. And that building would have collapsed in on itself had had CNL not intervened and bought the building and be fixing it. So they're endeavoring to do that. They couldn't get these screws in because there weren't enough machines so they had to dig everything by hand for these foundations. It's an arduous, time-consuming process, but he reaffirmed CNL's commitment to seeing the whole project through, and thankfully, they found the problem in the architecture with the walls, and they're being able to get some steel girding in there to reinforce the building so it'll stand for at least another 150 years. So that's very encouraging. As you were talking about the Fayette Street, I want to thank the city for doing the four-way stop there, and I was thinking that's going to be good to slow people down, because it's like a little racetrack going down that hill towards WCSR. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman Saha. Anybody got anything else? Councilman Sharp?
Going up the hill could be interesting in the winter, if you get 3 or 4 cars backed up there going up the hill. But anyway, I want to talk about Missy and the homeless people. I went up there, I've stopped up there a few times, just never know when I'm going to show up. And the first place I usually go is I walk right back there and talk to those people and see what's going on. And they are very proud of what they're doing. They're clean. They're actually trying. I won't say that about that camp outside of town. I want to stay away from that one. But however, I want to give you guys an example. You remember when they were here and we had one gentleman talk about he couldn't get a job because he couldn't take a shower. He's now got a shower, he's got a job. He's working at Kroger's. So somebody is making a step. That's one person. That's a step in a positive direction. She's going above and beyond the board to try and help these people. If they don't want to help, then they shouldn't be here. But at least she's offering a hand to help them. And we should be very appreciative of what she does. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Any more council comment? Speaking of Tifa, there'll be a letter tomorrow that Tifa Chair Drew Gelser and myself put together regarding the college property down there on the corner. hopefully we can come to some sort of compromise with them, and hopefully they can respect the spirit of what our downtown is supposed to be, and put some retail space in there, or at least remove the impediments that are causing it to be a tax exempt property. So, and that will be presented to Tiff tomorrow, and then it should be in the next council packet. And like I said, hopefully we can get everybody to the table, and everybody can agree that what we want to accomplish downtown. So, any other council comment?
Just one other thing while we're talking about downtown, the beautification committee of Tifa is working with Jake in the city. We're hoping to have the street lights on South Howell here, between the buildings. So we've got the equipment, we're doing all the research, but we're hoping to have enough well before Christmas. So it's a partnership. This would look, just bring downtown a little more, more celebrate.
No, that sounds great.
Yeah, so I like that.
Any more council comment?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Soha to adjourn this meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. This meeting's adjourned.